Thank you to the staff and advisors and officers of the Tourism Commission. On page 93 of Budget Paper 4, Volume 4, there's a key agency output that talks about engaging and communicating with key stakeholders to build the corporate brand and promote the value of the visitor economy to South Australia. Is it under this basis that I understand the government told people not to call Adelaide Radelaide or the City of Churches? And how did that go?
We don't mind what people call us as long as they're coming to South Australia, and I think you've seen from my conversation that that has certainly been a success and will continue to be so.
But I mean, as I understand it, the government told people that they weren't to be referring to Adelaide as Radelaide or the City of Churches. On what basis was that done?
There was some communication that was sent to the partners, as we were for the AFL, but we've made it very clear that that's not something that the state government is supporting. My key thing is people are talking about us, and they've been talking about us more than they have for a decade, and that's how we'll go on.
The commitment I understand the Minister gave last year that the government wasn't going to be pursuing influencer-led tourism anymore. Can the Minister confirm that that has been maintained as the policy this year? Have there been any expenses spent on influencer-type projects over the last 12 months?
So we obviously will continue our PR strategy, as do all state tourism bodies, and so do Tourism Australia. There's no doubt at all that we took some time to reflect and focus on a much more traditional mix of PR activities.
As I recall, and I can't remember the exact term that was provided last year, the Minister or otherwise the officers might recall, but there's a traditional form of providing an opportunity for tourism operators to come to Adelaide or South Australia for free. There is, I think it was under that context that was expanded to include influencers. Can the Minister confirm that the government remains as she was last year, that we won't be using influencers through promoting Instagram posts, promoting them to come to South Australia to put South Australia on their Instagram going forward? Is that still the government position?
Yeah. So I think I made it clear last year that we reflected and we wanted to be more traditional, but when we think about our PR strategy, we think about Media for Mills, which is
for Mills, that's the one.
As old as time, generating positive coverage about South Australia. So that's including traditional media outlets and publications. I think you are probably touching on the use of brand advocates, and we have been very clear about our focus, about their relevance, audience reach and engagement, the diversity and storytelling capability. We very much look for a balance of that. Those traditional Media for Mills is something that's been incredibly important for some of those great announcements about what we heard in New York and about Lonely Planet. That's how they happen, and that's been our area of focus.
So,
about which line you're looking at for me?
We're looking at key agency outputs, engagement and communication with key stakeholders. It's the second dot point to the bottom.
On
page 93.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so in relation to For Mills, is the Minister able to provide a breakdown of the expenditure on For Mills in the last 12 months and budgeted for the next 12 months, and whether they are, however she likes to categorise them, traditional, non-traditional, or whatever form she'd like to use?
Sure. The budget allocation was $590,000 for mill costs.
Is she able to provide a breakdown, or is that all? Or are they all traditional For Mills?
That's both of those groups.
How much for each?
I'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Can I go to page 97, and that's the program summary for tourism events. In relation to intra-government transfers on the income side, there was, in the last year's budget, there was an allocation for $10 million. However, the estimated result reflects an increase of more than $47 million. Now, the explanation of significant movements talks about a range of things, a major events fund for major event sponsorship and operations. Can I confirm that all of the increase from $10 million to $57 million that is identified in that top line, is that all from funding from the major events fund under DPC, or are there other expenses as well, other incomes as well?
Predominantly that intergovernment transfer income of $47.2 million is from the major events fund. Obviously you've identified that there was a fluctuation there. It's associated with those sporting events through event sponsorship, including funding received from the major events fund. As we know, that funding is to develop new homegrown events, grow our existing and owned and managed events, and secure major and international business events.
Are we talking about Gather Round and Live Golf, or are there other events as well?
There are significant events that, as we said, including the Gather Round, AFL Gather Round, Live Golf Adelaide, Harvest Rock, Luminate Adelaide, the Beach Volleyball World Championships, PGA, the Players Series, National Rugby Wheelchair Championships, the 2024 UCI Track Nations Cup, WOME Adelaide, Adelaide Festival. There was additional funding to bolster their program over the next 3 years. The Dale Chihuly event, or the exhibition that's coming up, the Adelaide Equestrian Festival, the Matildas game, which was an absolute sellout, the British and Irish Lions in 2024, and the 2024 netball final.
So are all of those allocations, given that they are intra-government transfers from major events to tourism and then presumably expended as grants and subsidies from tourism to those operators. Can I clarify, is major events then the decision maker in allocating those funding and not tourism?
So we provide significant advice to the Department of Premier and Cabinet about those major events. And of course, many times we're also then providing different roles as either a sponsorship, a major sponsor, or of course in other activities, we are actually managing the event.
So tourism is operating as a partner once the event is here, and you're providing advice to major events who are the decision maker, and then the funding comes from major events to you to disperse to the organisations. Are there any examples where tourism has provided advice to major events for projects that tourism thinks should be funded, that major events has declined to do the funding?
Not that I'm aware of within that situation. Obviously, we all have bright ideas, all of us, and we want the best for the state, and we want great events that have that great return on investment and what we do. It is commercial in confidence, obviously, because we get approached by lots of different groups of potential opportunities.
Are there any examples of projects that tourism's advice to DPC, to major events, was that the project should not be funded, but major events has decided to proceed?
Not that I'm aware of. We provide the facts and provide the analysis, and that decision is made then through major events.
The funding allocated for the 24-25 budget in intergovernment transfers is $13.6 million, which is a fairly significant drop from the $57 million that was provided this year. This $13.6 million, by my reading, represents what your expectation is of major events or others coming into tourism. Noting that the actuals for the last 2 years have been so much more than that, on what basis is this $13.6 million figure being arrived at? Yeah.
So there are fluctuations in income and expenditure through the intergovernment transfers year on year related to this event sponsorship. Of course, as we are aware, the transfer funds to the SATC comes from the Major Events Fund, which sits within the Department of Premier and Cabinet. The purpose of this funding is to develop new homegrown events, grow our existing and managed events, and of course secure those major national and international events. These funding are approved on a year-by-year basis, and that's why we have significant fluctuations in income and expenditure through that intergovernment transfers.
My understanding is that $57 million would reflect the expenditure that was undertaken in 23-24. So if there were events that were scheduled for the years ahead, then presumably there's an understanding that that budget would still need to come. Is there therefore a reasonable expectation that we will see that $13.6 million grow substantially in order to fulfil whether it's Live Golf or Gather Round or other things? Or is it just that Major Events hasn't decided whether to use tourism as the channel through which that funding will flow yet?
Yes.
Okay. So one imagines that it's assuming tourism retains this role as the channel, then that will go up again. Is the Minister able to outline what that $13.6 million comprises then?
I'll get some clear definitions. One of the key things to remember with these upcoming events is often the money is not just expended in one financial year. For example, I can think about the British and Irish Lions, which in 2025, then there would have been payments under the previous government, I think, and then our government leading up to that. So it's often not just in one financial year, but I'll get some details about. So the funding that is that 13.6 is predominantly from the Major Events Fund.
All right, we'll have omnibus questions in a little while, but we'll make some detail there. So I'll move on at the moment. The grants and subsidies on the same page, we're on page 97, sir, identifies a significant difference, not just from the actuals. The actual was $46 million last year on a budget of $21 million, but I assume that that would be explained for the same explanation as we've just gone through on the income side. But the budget for grants and subsidies has dropped from last year's budget of $21 million to this year $14 million. Is the Minister able to explain why it appears that this is a cut of $7 million compared to last year's budget?
So just like my previous answer in regards to the intergovernment transfers, the same thing happens for grants and subsidies, that there is some fluctuations there. Once again, it's to do with event sponsorship, including money received from major events, and partially offset, of course, by a reallocation of expenses from grants and subsidies to supplies and services, and a carryover of major event sponsorship from 23-24.
Minister, forgive me if I missed something there, but I would imagine that the Major Events Fund decisions would explain the difference between the budget and the estimated result in each year. But the figures I'm talking about are the difference between the 23-24 budget of $21 million and the 24-25 budget of $14 million. Is the Minister saying that that $21 million figure was inflated by carryover from the previous year? Is that the explanation? Or is there actually a drop in the amount of partnerships, sport, sponsorship and so forth that is anticipated in the 24-25 year compared to the 23-24 year? It's a drop in the budget of $7 million, so I would have thought that would be of some significance.
It's what I said previously. There's a fluctuations in regards to the Major Events Fund money coming in. The carryover was less, was 2.5 million.
Does the Minister care to take this opportunity to let the people of South Australia know how much we're spending on Live Golf and the Gather Round?
That would be commercial in confidence. And also, it's best directed to the Premier.
Well, I appreciate the Premier has a role, but it turns out that SA Tourism actually pays them according to this budget line, but it is, I think, the law that the Shadow Minister for Tourism or their representative has to ask that every year in the Parliament, so...
As it did under the previous government.
Yes, also the law. Can the Minister outline which of the major events supported in 23-24 will receive continued support in 24-25 and going forward from there?
Are you asking in regards to the Major Events Fund, or are you asking in regards to our sponsorship and partnerships?
I'm going to ask, or both.
As you may remember, in a previous question you asked what that intergovernment transfer related to, and obviously the question that you're asking now is from that what continues into multiple years. There is significant additional funding for the Tour Down Under. That's a key part of the additional money in the state budget. Obviously we're very proud of being able to deliver women at the absolute elite level with the UCI, and that supports that development of that event. And of course it's our 25th anniversary next year. So that support will go in this financial year and into the forward estimates for Tour Down Under. The British and Irish Lions in 2025, that continues across the forward estimates for 24-25, 25-26. Illuminate Adelaide, which has been an incredible addition to our winter program, particularly fond of the City Lights, the free program that invites South Australians and other visitors to enjoy that. What I particularly find with Illuminate is the opportunity to look at arts and technology and music and to inspire our younger people to involved in those STEAM subjects, to be attracted to the opportunity between coding but using creative arts as well. In the previous budget, we continued that funding for a further 4 years. Volleyball Australia, of course, goes on for 3 more years. The 2024 netball final, which is over 2 periods, the PGA, the Players season, 3 National Rugby Wheelchair Championships over 3 financial years. WOMAD Adelaide, very pleased to continue over another 5 years our relationship with WOMAD Adelaide, which continues to be one of the biggest draw cards for interstate guests, which is absolutely fantastic that they do that. The Adelaide Festival, of course, we've provided some additional support there. And the Dale Chihuly exhibition over 2 financial years, and that will start at the end of September going through to April. And of course some additional work with Football Australia and Harvest Rock over more than 1.
Thank you. Were there any new events in the last year that received funding for the first time?
I'll grab that list again. No. Just give me that list that you have. You were asking which events were funded for the very first time in 23-24.
I was reflecting, Minister, that Illuminate is an excellent program which
Yes.
we remember Stephen Marshall very fondly for, and a Tour Down Under, a legacy of Joan Hall. It's her time of Tourism Minister as well, and I'm very pleased that they continue to get support from you as Minister and this government, as I assume they will for many years to come.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's any new ones this year.
Particularly, I've talked already about the Dale Chihuly exhibition.
Oh, yeah.
It's the very first time in the Southern Hemisphere that this exhibition will be held. Once again, you have this amazing connection between engineering and art. Dale Chihuly is seen as the most significant glass artist in the world. He has significant international following. I think that will be an excellent addition. Also, of course, the Matildas event that was new this year. And the first time we funded the British and Irish Lions came the first time in 23-24.
Thank you. Is there a definition of what a dollar value is required to be for something to be classified as a major event?
There's a definition in the Major Events Act, which is the responsibility of the Premier.
Can the, we'll move to budget paper 5, page 61, building a South Australian destination brand. Can the Minister provide a breakdown of, this is a $5 million operating expenses, can the Minister provide a breakdown of how the $5 million will be spent, how much for interstate marketing and advertising, how much for international?
Can I talk a little bit about the Place brand? This is a significant amount of work that's been done with a very small team, not just with the South Australian Tourism Commission, but with that Brand SA as well as Trade and Investment. We think we have an opportunity here. We have people's attention. Now we wish to keep it in what is a very competitive world. So we've been doing some work in regards to this about the acceleration and adoption of a consumer awareness of a distinct South Australian destination brand. We want to lift our state's appeal and awareness, both interstate and internationally, at the same time supporting our regions. This additional marketing fund predominantly will be paid direct to media activity to help generate that reach, the marketing messages, and increase those digital leads. Most importantly, we're looking to support the launch of a new destination brand. One of a key part of this is we have this South Australian logo that is used by more than 8,000 businesses. It's been really taken on and embraced. What we didn't have was a proposition to go with it, and that's a key thing that we'll be working on through that launch and through that destination. So it's building our South Australian destination brand. A key part of that is to be embraced not just for tourism. Obviously, international students, we're competitive, vibrant. We want to be going out there, being clear of what we do, and to some extent we're influenced by other very successful campaigns, including New Zealand, 100% Pure, and more recently in Tasmania, they Come Down for Air, which has clarified the proposition and lifted the attraction, and that's our intention here.
And how much will be spent for interstate and international?
I'm sorry?
The question was about how much money for interstate.
That hasn't been determined at this point.
Okay. Can the Minister identify if influencers will be used as part of this?
Well, as I identified before, we have PR activity with the media for meals and of course these brand advocates. I suspect that they'll be part of the package, but a very small part. As I indicated, that activity will be about increasing those digital leads to South Australian tourism operators. This is an opportunity, the momentum is now. We have people's attention, we want to keep it, and we'll do that in the best way possible.
Does this additional $5 million include funding for the Regional Tourism Alignment Initiative, or is that funded separately?
Yeah, so it's all together in that significant state budget increase. It's additional support for regional tourism alignment to bolster regional tourism industry capability and product development. This has been a particular area of focus for myself. I think we have enormous capacities within the regions. We saw a significant change post-COVID of where money in the dollar was spent in the visitor economy. While we've seen a little bit of a shave back, it's about 46 cents in the dollar now. What we want to do is build the regional structure, the promotion of the region's product development and industry capability building. and that continues to be rolled out. We've taken quite a considerable amount of time to do consultation. We've been talking to local government, our regional tourism managers. There are unique ways that these regional tourism managers are supported while they are our local contact manager, and I'm very pleased to announce that money that goes to them directly has increased now to $80,000 allocated to each region for next year, so a significant increase. But we're also going to work about our long-term plans for the review.
So how much funding has been allocated for overall for the Regional Tourism Alignment Initiative in 24-25?
Do the 500,000. Yeah. As I indicated already, there's been a lift, will be a lift in 24-25, and that increases substantially use of that money. And then, of course, and there's a little bit of additional money for, this is increased money?
It's the same, so we also support Business Information
Yeah,
Service.
what's the increase, yeah?
It's just 15,000 this financial year, and this was storage. No,
What's the increase?
there is no increase for this part.
So when we consider how we support the regions, obviously the visitor information centres is something that, although we don't run, we support through with $15,000. Each of the regions had their visitors' guides, and we support that by storage and distribution as well. The other thing that we'll be looking at, of course, is the 2-year funding agreement for our regional tourism organisations. And that's been something that's important to do of those 2 years.
Did I miss it somewhere in there? Was there a dollar figure for the Regional Alignment Initiative in 24-25, a total figure? I heard uplift.
Additional money of $500,000.
500,000, thank you.
It's part of the state budget, yes.
Just while we're on the broader branding issue, and the use of influencers, has the department or SATC been contacted by the Australian Taxation Office regarding the influencers' tax liabilities since they announced a crackdown last year? Okay. And probably would have been best asked in the previous line, so I'll refer back to the previous line. Let's go with grants and subsidies, if you like. Was any effort made by SATC or the government or the minister to get Taylor Swift to perform in Adelaide rather than having all of our South Australians buying tickets to go to Sydney and Melbourne?
What is your reference in the...
Well, we have a budget allocation of $30 million in the 2023-24 budget, 27 million spent, and one of the key outputs for that is, of course, to grow domestic awareness of South Australia and international awareness. And so under that output, and with the vast resources the Minister has at her disposal, did anyone get on the telephone to Taylor Swift's management team to encourage them to South Australia?
I think the best way to answer that, at all times we are ambitious and aspirational, and when opportunities present, at all times we're out there talking to people about what that potential might be. It's inappropriate during the commercial and confidence nature of these negotiations, but I'm sure you asked this question as someone who wants to grow the state, but maybe a Swiftie fan. You are the father of young children who may find her someone who they look up to, and of course she's had an incredibly successful career. I can assure you that at all times that we're looking for those opportunities. What we do see, however, and perhaps there are others that can answer this, particularly Martin might be able to come through from an AVM perspective, because that the amount of movement for the staging, etc., particularly in these very well-known artists is considerable, and they tend to stick to the East Coast. But we are always ambitious.
For the record, I quite like Taylor Swift, but I consider myself more Swiftie adjacent rather than a Swiftie myself.
That is important to know.
There's at least 3 members of my household who would consider themselves Swifties, and I'm on the path. I might ask the member for Colton to
Before
do
we
the
just move, I
omnibus.
just wanted to seek a clarification. I am the Minister responsible for the Major Events Act, and of course that is often talked about how we control the commercialisation and protect that act. However, the fund is responsibility of the Premier, just to clarify.
Oh, I appreciate that, but there's a budget line here saying that once they've decided what to do with that fund, it flows through tourism, and I think that's what the intergovernment transfers were. But
That is
can I
correct.
suggest we go to the omnibus questions, sir? Is that
Sure.
okay?
That's fine.
The member for Colton, I think, has the set.
Minister, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many executive appointments have been made since the 1st of July 2023, and what is the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many executive positions have been abolished since 1 July 2023, and what was the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what has been the total cost of executive position termination since 1 July 2023? For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister provide a breakdown of expenditure on consultants and contractors with a total estimated cost above $10,000 engaged since the 1st of July 2023, listing the name of the consultant, contractor or service supplier, the method of appointment, the reason for the engagement and the estimated total cost of the work? For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister provide an estimate of the total cost to be incurred in 24-25 for consultants and contractors, and for each case in which the consultant or contractor has already been engaged at a total estimated cost above $10,000, the name of the consultant or contractor, the method of appointment, the reason for the engagement and the total estimated cost? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, how many surplus employees are there in June 2024? And for each surplus employee, what is the title or classification of the position and the total annual employment cost? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, what is the number of executive staff to be cut to meet the government's commitment to reduce the spending on the employment of executive staff? And for each position to be cut, its classification, total remuneration cost and the date by which the position will be cut. For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, what savings targets have been set for 24-25 and each year of the forward estimates? What is the estimated FTE impact of these measures? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, what was the actual FTE count as of June 2024, and what is the projected actual FTE count account for the end of each year of the forward estimates? What is the budgeted total employment cost for each year of the forward estimates, and how many targeted voluntary separation packages are estimated to be required to meet budget targets over the forward estimates, and what is their estimated cost? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, how much is budgeted to be spent on goods and services for 24-25 and for each year of the forward estimates? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, how many FTEs are budgeted to provide communication and promotion activities in 24-25 and each year of the forward estimates, and what is their estimated employment cost? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, what is the total budgeted cost of government paid advertising, including campaigns across all mediums in 24-25? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, please provide for each individual investing expenditure project administered the name, total estimated expenditure, actual expenditure occurred to June 2023, and budgeted expenditure for 24-25, 25-26 and 26-27 financial years. For each grant program or fund the Minister is responsible for, please provide the following information for the 24-25, 25-26 and 26-27 financial years. Name of the program or fund, the purpose of the program or fund, budget and payment into the program or fund, budgeted expenditure from the program or fund, and details including the value and beneficiary, or any commitments already made to be funded from the program or fund. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, is the agency confident that you'll meet your expenditure targets in 24-25? Have any budget decisions been made between the delivery of the budget on 6th of June 2024 and today that might impact on the numbers presented in the budget papers which were examined today? Are you expecting any reallocations across your agency's budget lines during 24-25? If so, what is the nature of the reallocation? For each department or agency reporting to the Minister, what South Australian businesses will be used in procurement for your agencies in 24-25? What percentage of total procurement spend for your agency does this represent? And how does this compare to last financial year? What protocols and monitoring systems has the department implemented to ensure that the productivity, efficiency and quality of service delivery is maintained while employees work from home? What percentage of your department's budget has been allocated to the management of remote work infrastructure, including digital tools, cybersecurity and support services, and how does that compare with previous years? How many procurements have been undertaken by the department this financial year? How many have been awarded to interstate businesses, and how many of those were signed off by the CE? How many contractor invoices were paid by the department directly this financial year? How many and what percentage were paid within 15 days? And how many and what percentage were paid outside of 15 days? How many of what percentage of staff who undertake procurement activities have undertaken training on participation policies and local industry participation this financial year?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Can I go to page 94? And there is a target, point 3, increase cruise ship visits to South Australia and home port itineraries to drive overnight stays, regional dispersal and visitor expenditure to the state. I understand that there's been an announcement recently that P&O Cruises Australia will cease operations next year and its flagship Pacific Explorer will be retired. What action has the Minister and the Government taken to fill the gap left by P&O's departure from the market?
Yes, look, cruising has been incredibly successful for South Australia. In this last year, we had 122 ship visits, and we've grown the sector by 48%. 22-23, we had a record year of 215 million that was generated from cruise ships. What is particularly exceptional about cruise ships is their ability to disperse around the state, and during that time we had visits to Port Adelaide, which is the main terminal, to Kangaroo Island and Port Lincoln. But we also have significant ship visits to expedition landing sites and anchorages in unique and remote coastal locations. So they are those much smaller ships as well. They go to Wallaroo and Robe and different places like that, so it's been quite successful. Obviously, across Australia and the Pacific, it was disappointing news that Carnival made this decision to retire the P&O brand. As I understand it, they've actually had this brand, they've owned P&O for quite some time, but that have made that change. We were really pleased when the Explorer, Pacific Explorer, home ported here in South Australia, and that was quite significant because of the products, products that they buy here from our producers. It's worth a considerable amount of money. We'll continue to talk to Carnival. SATC has a very long-standing relationship with them, and we continue to talk to them about different opportunities that this represents. Obviously, we've been getting, with the increasing cruise ship visits, quite a good reputation. Particularly Kangaroo Island is an incredible drawcard for those ships. What we would like to do, of course, is have the more international ships with a higher proportion of international passengers who spend more money and like to stay here for longer. We have diversified the number of cruise lines and ships over this period of time, so we're focusing on those high yield visitors on the luxury cruises. In this most recent season, for the first time, we had the Royal Caribbean's Brilliance of the Seas, Ambassador's Ambience, AIDA Cruises, AIDA Soul, and Celebrity Cruises Celebrity Edge. That was the first time we had one of those celebrity cruises line. So KI welcomed for its first time the Royal Caribbean ship, and Port Lincoln had the Cunard's Queen Elizabeth for the first time ever. It is my intention to have some deep conversations with these head office groups to talk to them about what we have. We've already been in contact with them quite extensively. This will be an impact across Australia and the Pacific, but we do see that there is opportunities given the recognition of us with the great drawcard of KI.
Given the Pacific Explorer ship, as I understand, particularly engaged between Outer Harbour and Port Lincoln, My understanding is cruises planned beyond February 2025 are being cancelled and refunded. Has the Minister had a chance to speak to Port Lincoln Council or Chamber of Commerce or tourism operators in Port Lincoln to discuss how they are going to fill this gap in their local
We are
market?
constantly in contact, particularly because Port Lincoln Council provides the Welcome program, and therefore we have a long-term relationship with them. Every single season there is fluctuations in which ship visits come, and of course on occasions when the weather is rough, a predicted visit is not able to happen as well. We recognise that this will be a challenge. We recognise that P&O has been a great supporter here and will continue to work with Carnival and other cruise lines to see what those opportunities are.
I mean, obviously, we appreciate the financial benefit of cruise ships to South Australia, which, for very obvious reasons, we didn't have between 2020 and 2022. With this focus, and it's been identified as a target in the budget papers, are these relationships managed within SATC or by you as the Minister? Is there a directorate within SATC focused on cruise ship? Who is responsible for managing this
Destination
relationship?
development within the South Australian Tourism Commission. But of course, I am not afraid to pick up the phone when having those conversations. And obviously, Flinders Ports plays a very big role in this as well, because that's the port that all the cruise ships come to as well. We are expecting in 24-25, the season will commence in October of this year, 118 cruise ship visits, which are scheduled across 17 different cruise lines. So this year will be very similar to the previous year. It's the following year after that there may be some more challenges. And I'm pleased to say, from a regional point of view, that will be about estimated 40 visits to Port Adelaide, 10 visits to Port Lincoln and 30 visits to Kangaroo Island. And we'll also be hosting the Australian Cruise Association annual conference here in Adelaide in September 2024.
And what is the quantum of the budget that's allocated to this cruise strategy?
Okay. In 24-25, the allocated budget is 621,503 for all cruise-related activities.
Another question on.
I've got another line, but if you wanted to...
The member for
McKillop.
McKillop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question to the Minister is regarding, obviously, Budget Paper 4, Volume 4, page 92, quotes 27 million for tourism events and 33 million for tourism and marketing. My question is, what proportion of that will be spent in the Limestone Coast? And going on, is there consideration in the budget to work collaboratively with the Department of Environment and Water to initiate a master plan for the Naracoorte Caves?
Well, thank you very much for your question. And it was only 2 weeks ago that you joined my regional visit across the whole of the Limestone Coast. Regional events is an area that's been supported for quite some time. 30 events were supported over the last year, and there's a budget of $500,000 for that. We certainly know that the costs of running events have increased for everyone. Whether it be a tourism event, a major event, or even in my other portfolio, a multicultural event, all events have increased. We continue to sponsor that, and we've just run a round for those regional events that will be staged between September and August of the following year. Obviously, we do it in advance so people know what they will be doing. Obviously, the Limestone Coast is incredibly important to us. It actually has this great unique selling point of its proximity to the Victorian border. And so compared to other regions, it has this ability to pull particularly international tourists travelling the Great Ocean Road to come into the Limestone Coast. We also, I was reminded when I was down during my trip of how many people come through the Limestone Coast going to Kangaroo Island. And one of our key ambitions is for them not to just stay one night, but to stay 2 nights, particularly to increase the activities around that area. I think there is great opportunity there. Through the election campaign, there was a commitment to increase the profile of the Lansdowne Coast, and a new campaign will be there to promote their region and its marketing efforts. So therefore we've lifted about them being featured in key advertising campaigns, as well as inclusion of digital, social media, PR and cooperative campaigns. So we've actually seen quite a bit of lift there. Can I just say, we had a conversation about when we have major events here in Adelaide and the opportunity for regions to benefit from that, and particularly in the AFL Gather Round, the Mount Gambier Council had a supported campaign from the SATC for Before the Bounce. So taking on the opportunity of that travelling component, and 50% of people that came to the Gather Round did drive to it. And so they had lots of different things where community activations, they had visits by former players, I think different games that were happened. What I heard from my regional trip is the whole of the Limestone Coast would like to be included in those Before the Bounce programs. And not only just before the bounce, but after the event as well. The Gather Round this year was held in the middle of the Victorian school holidays. So we promoted travel before and after the Gather Round. What we were absolutely delighted to see is the length of stay for people coming, and it really shifted from those 2 nights to at least 4 nights for people coming, really making it quite a significant South Australian period to discover. And of course, what we want people to do is to look at our regions. So the Limestone Coast is a key part of that, but all regions to be considered when we've got such a high proportion of people with their eyes on South Australia, not just their eyes, actually travelling here as well. Can I touch on the other area? Although Minister for Environment is responsible for the Naracoorte Caves, it is a huge catalyst for the area, and in fact had 97,000 visitors just last year. What I heard from people there is they would like it to be a key area to display all positive things that are happening there, particularly the arts community, and of course the wine that the Coonawarra is very famous for on the Limestone Coast. So within that area, what we have is the potential a master plan, which I think is due. Probably the last master plan was some time ago, and I'll continue to work with the relevant minister to see that happen. Of course, we were really pleased in the SA budget to see Generations in Jazz. I know it's not your electorate, but the area. We have a sponsorship agreement, of course, for that, but it also included $720,000 to construct 4 permanent structured pavilions in Mount Gambier for that annual weekend jazz festival. I think there's a lot of potential for the regions. Someone's called it the 5 Cs, calling out craters and caves. Potentially, I think we could see it as a real draw card for activities for people to participate in.
Member for Narangba, do you have a question? No, okay. Member for Moriarty?
We'll go to page 95. The explanation of significant movements includes funding received from the Economic Recovery Fund for financial assistance packages to grow the South Australian visitor economy. Can the Minister outline what support will be provided through the $2.5 million from the Economic Recovery Fund?
You're just asking about the current payments that are shown in the budget?
Yeah, the explanation of significant
so that
movement.
is regards to aviation marketing.
Regards to?
Aviation marketing?
Can the
Sorry,
Minister?
aviation as a whole.
So the Economic Recovery Fund moved $2.5 million to tourism between last year's estimated result and this year's budget for aviation marketing, that's correct? All right,
Not just marketing, it was also destination development. Okay. To clarify, these are financial assistance packages for our ambition to reinstate those airlines and attract new airlines.
So, I'm just trying to unpack what the Minister's just said. These are packages to attract international airlines.
This is something that's always been used within government. This is not new at all.
I'm not
Yeah.
disputing that. I'm just trying to unpack what the $2.5 million was for. So when we move to the $2.5 million, this is it's from the Economic Recovery Fund. That's the bit that's troubling me. I might
Well,
move.
it is entirely about economic recovery. So aviation and direct aviation links are incredibly important, not just for tourism, but for trade and investment, and of course for international students as well. We've always been ambitious about recovering what we lost in COVID. Just to clarify, the Economic Recovery Fund aims to assist business and industry in key areas to grow, secure well-paid jobs, improve productivity, increase exports and supportive, innovative value-adding technologies in South Australia. So it's quite wide in what it does. We were really delighted when the Economic Recovery Fund in its first round included regional tourism projects as well. But it's very much about economic recovery post-COVID.
Just a follow-up from that, I appreciate the member from Narungga has one, but when you talked about the regional tourism projects, is that was the previous year and that's not for this one? Is that what I
The
interpret?
regional tourism is related to new money in the budget.
Narungga?
Chair, I apologise, I've just walked in, so if you're repeating information, let me know and I'll check Hansard directly, but I'm looking at budget paper 4, volume 4, page 94, a lot of 4s. The highlight for 23-24 was the recreational fishing tourism strategy and increasing the contribution of the sector to 468 million. If you haven't already, can you outline how you intend to increase the rec fishing contribution? Are we going to start charging them more in some way, or how do we envisage their contribution increasing? Is there going to be more fishers on the water?
Well, thank you very much for your interest in this area. This was an election commitment, and the strategy, recreation and fishing tourism strategy, was released in February 2024. We developed this in partnership with RecFish SA to grow that recreational fishing tourism, and we're quite ambitious about that growth. In order to achieve the strategy, we talked with industry and public consultation, meetings with government and industry stakeholders, public and industry survey, and provided that opportunity for written feedback. It was co-authored and endorsed by that industry peak body, RecFish SA. I think particularly in the region that you represent, charter fishing has been an attractive tourism component, that people come over specifically to go out with an operator to do charter fishing. But we know that people often enjoy coming out, doing a whole range of activities, and what we felt it could be marketed in a better way, and that's obviously what the election commitment was around, to see it as a draw card for people coming here to South Australia. As we talked about before, we know that we've got their attention. They're coming here for those catalyst events that we've put on. They're coming here because they want to get out and see our beautiful regions. We're still #1 in food and wine. But we wanted to also be clear that there are other activities that you can do. If you're going out to Streaky Bay and having a beautiful time there, or maybe you're going out to Boston Bay in the Eyre Peninsula, these are opportunities to understand not only how much fishing is part of the economy, which people are quite interested in, they want to taste and feel, but they also want to have that opportunity to go out on a boat and experience it themselves. And in fact, I have a great interest in agri-tourism, and particularly aquatourism, and we've seen how new product that comes in is really interesting to people. And one of the areas that I'd love to develop is the crayfish experience. And this is something that was re-emphasised to me in the Limestone Coast. There are some barriers at the moment. According to some regulations, we're working out how we can work our way through them, particularly for the Chinese market, who love us to see the crayfish come out of the sea, but would love to then see it being cooked and be able to eat that. We would love to be able to do that. So fishing in many of its forms, but any of that connectivity is a key part of value adding to what we have here in South Australia.
The allotted time having expired, I declare the examination of South Australian Tourism Commission and the Adelaide Venue Management Authority complete. Further examination of the proposed payments for the administered items for the Department of Treasury and Finance will continue after the break. Thank you to the Minister and her advisors. And Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, sir. I move the committee be suspended until 11:30 a.m.
Is that seconded? That's seconded. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Those against say no. I call it for the ayes. The committee stands suspended until 11:30 a.m. And I thank all for their presence.